I left home at 19, with 3 bags and a secret bank account. Years later, my dad finally called asking for $18,500. I blocked his number and let him panic. Growing up, I was told I caused all my family's problems. My parents had my older brother first, who was great. Nice person, good grades, and good athletics. 4 years later they had me, and they said their luck ran out. My father lost his job 7 months after my birth. My mother had a car accident when I was 3. I was 5 when my grandmother died. My family's dog escaped when I was 6. I was blamed for every bad thing, like I was cursed. My mother initially joked. She laughed and called me her little storm cloud. It stopped being a joke. By age 11, my parents publicly blamed me for their problems. If the bill was higher than planned, it was because I overused electricity at home. Maybe my negative energy broke everything. Due to raising a poor child, my father was not promoted. Brother caught on and called me Jinx, middle and high school. I trusted them long term. I doubted my curse. For things not my fault, I apologized often. I tried to blend in to avoid spreading my bad luck. To show I wasn't a burden, I got good grades. At 17, I worked and bought my own clothes and school supplies, so they couldn't say I wasted their money. Nothing I did changed their opinion. At 18, my brother got into a good college. My parents invited all their friends to a huge party for him. They said he would succeed and make them proud. 2 years later, I was accepted to the same school with a higher scholarship. My mother predicted it wouldn't last because I always lost things. My father advised me to attend community college to avoid shame if I fail. I went anyway. I left home at 19 with 3 bags and a secret bank account I had funded for years. My parents did not help me move. My brother didn't say goodbye. Because she knew I would return home, my mother told me to call. Not called. College was difficult, not luck-based. It was hard to unlearn everything my parents taught me about myself. I met my first friends. Real friends who didn't curse me. I joined clubs and studied important topics. My roommate said it was okay to fail an exam. We'd study more next time. She didn't blame me for damage. She simply improved me. I graduated honors. An architecture firm 5 hours from home hired me. I was a project manager after 6 years of upward mobility. Small condo I bought with my own money. I adopted a non-fleeing cat. My partner enjoyed being with me. Since I made it without their words, everything my parents predicted would fall apart stayed together. Meanwhile, home life deteriorated. My father lost another job due to drinking. My mother's health declined because she didn't see doctors until it was urgent. My brother quit college after 3 years and returned home. After failing to find work, he played video games in his childhood room. Golden kid was fool's gold. Nobody connected the dots. They anticipated my failure. My mother called me twice a year on my birthday to check in. She implied she expected me to struggle. After I was promoted, she told me not to get too comfortable because good things don't last for me. When I told her I bought a condo, she asked about my debt. She laughed when I said I was glad and said, "Give it time." So I stopped telling her. Quit calling back. My parents couldn't afford my brother's surgery 4 years ago. First call in years from my father. I wasn't asked how I was. He only said they needed money. I should share with my parents since I seem to have so much. I stare at my phone for 25 minutes after hanging up. After hearing my father demand money like I owed them, my palms are still shaky. My mind keeps repeating 18,500. This ends the 4-year silence. The only thing offered was money, and the expectation that I would pay it. The constriction in my chest is new since leaving home. Same awful feeling of being blamed for your existence. I placed the phone on the coffee table and waited for it to ring again, expecting a worse message. Sunset darkens the living room, so I don't turn on the lights. My cat joins me on the couch, and I instinctively stroke behind her ears, focusing on the silky fur rather than my rage. Lucas returns from work at 6:45 p.m. Despite setting my phone down, I'm still holding it. I probably picked it up again without realizing. As he drops his suitcase beside the entrance, I watch his face change to adjust to the dark room and my expression. I tell him about the call, but my words sound robotic, like I'm giving a shopping list instead of explaining how my father wanted money after years of treating me like a curse. Lucas sits next to me and tightens his jaw like he's upset but doesn't want to show it. He asks what my father said, and I quote him because I remember it. His expression changes from worry to protection, making me feel less weird for being sad. His question about my well-being makes me hesitate because I don't know the answer. I want to yell, feel terrible for being furious, and am sad and exhausted. I tell him I'm not sure and he says, "That makes perfect sense." We sit quietly while I sort my emotions. Anger rationalizes, calling after 4 years to beg for money. But guilt puzzles me. This nagging voice said, maybe I should help because he is family. Maybe denying makes me just as wicked as them. Pain is involved. This crushing realization that they only contact me when they need something from me. I look for my therapist's number on my phone. Since it's after work, Dr. Claire Morgan's voicemail comes on and my hands shake. I left a message asking if she has any emergency appointments this week because I'm thinking about old patterns. I hear my mother telling me not to be selfish, that family helps family, and that good girls don't leave their brothers in surgery. I hate that voice and how it still controls me after so long. I hang up and tell Lucas I called my therapist. He squeezes my hand and says, great idea. Lucas sleeps next to me as I stare at the ceiling that night. Instead of shutting out, my brain replays experiences I thought I had overcome. When I was 7, my father lost another job. My mother said I worried and distracted him. I contributed to his first job loss when I was 7 months old. I remember my 3-year-old car accident. My mother said she didn't see the other car because she was focused on me in the back seat for years. After my grandmother died of cancer when I was 5, my parents talked about bad luck, staring at me as if I caused it. I realize I'm crying silently as the memories flood me, each one a tiny wound that never healed. Dr. Claire Morgan's office called again the next morning while I was getting ready for work. Can I make it? Her receptionist says she has a 1:30 p.m. cancellation. I never call in sick from work and spend the morning walking around my apartment to distract myself. I clean a clean kitchen. My bookshelf is organized by color, then author, then color. I've started 4 streaming shows and can't concentrate. I arrive at her workplace 20 minutes early and practice my exit speech in my car. I feel like I've traveled back in time when I enter her office, from the 29-year-old who had her life under control, to the worried 24-year-old who started therapy. Dr. Claire Morgan points to a familiar chair, and I sit, crying. I describe the call, my father's voice after 4 years, the money demand, and everything else to her. I talk for 18 minutes, and she listens, nodding occasionally, letting me finish. She pauses before asking what I want to do after I finish talking. Not what I should do or what will improve me, but what I want. I researched Ethan's illness and spent 90 minutes last night reading about his surgery. This is genuine and vital. Without it, he may have major issues. But I also know that my parents have let him live rent-free in his childhood bedroom playing video games while they pay for everything. They never made him get an insurance job. They never forced him to be independent like they did me at 19. I bought my clothes and school supplies at 17, and he's 32, and they still wash his laundry. Dr. Claire Morgan asks why Ethan has no insurance, which makes me think. He's never worked long enough for benefits, so I know. He's worked maybe 7 months in the last 6 years, always leaving or being fired and returning home when my parents allow. They kept him dependent and blamed me for being a burden as a child. My chest hurts from the double standard. I paid for my own expenses as a child, but he gets full assistance in his 30s. I still get the money request call. We spent the next 35 minutes discussing the difference between helping a family in crisis and reinforcing the broken patterns that drove me out. Dr. Claire Morgan warns that giving them money without conditions would reinforce their belief that I exist to fix their problems and that I am responsible for all their problems. After years of accusing me of causing their problems, she wonders what message I send by paying $18,500. I hadn't thought that, but she's right. It would mean agreeing with them and admitting I owe them anything for raising their miserable daughter. After therapy, I write down my limits and what I'll do before responding to my father. Defining parameters instead of saying yes or no is strange, unsettling, and possibly powerful. Dr. Claire Morgan reminds me that I can choose my relationship with them and not accept their position. I think about proper assistance as I drive home. Something that doesn't make me feel betrayed, but doesn't abandon Ethan when he's sick. Lucas gets home around 7:15. My laptop is open and a notebook with scrawled thoughts is on the kitchen table. Before asking what I want for dinner, he puts down his work bag and kisses my head. After I say I don't care, he suggests we order from the Thai restaurant down the street since neither of us wants to cook. He sits across from me and asks how I'm doing while we wait for dinner. Close my laptop and admit I've been running around in circles all day trying to figure out what to do. He grabs my hand across the table and tells me that while there may not be a right answer, I can set boundaries for what I can offer. As usual, we eat lunch at the table instead of in front of the TV. Between pad thai bites, I tell him I keep thinking about Ethan's surgery and how awful it feels to ignore it. Lucas agrees and says helping doesn't make me responsible for fixing my parents' mistakes. Instead of giving money to my parents who haven't managed their finances well in decades, he suggests helping Ethan find resources. The idea makes sense. I could research hospital payment plans and financial aid. Maybe help Ethan get medical help if he qualifies. That seems different from sending my father a check and expecting it to fix anything. Lucas suggests that this way, I could help Ethan get medical treatment while my parents avoid responsibility for how they got here. We talk about the logistics, and I feel less trapped between two terrible options. Saturday morning, I vow to answer an email before losing my nerve. While Lucas goes to the gym, I make coffee and sit at my laptop with a clear mind for the first time since my father's call. I start a new message, enter my father's email address, and stare at the blank space, trying to think of something to say. The first draft was furious, so I deleted it. The second one sounds too apologetic, like I'm requesting permission to set limits. Third attempt feels closer. I understand Ethan's need for surgery and want to help him get it. I explain that I am uncomfortable giving them money directly, but I am happy to help Ethan research hospital financial aid and payment plans. I edit words for 90 minutes to remove defensiveness and justification. By lunchtime, I've made something clear and solid without being nasty. Instead of emailing it, I keep it as a draft to reread tomorrow with fresh eyes. This Sunday I read it twice and made minor changes. Lucas reads it over my shoulder and says it's rational, sympathetic, and respectful of my boundaries. I hesitate before clicking send. Part of me knows sending this will annoy my parents. You want money without strings, but I'm offering something different. But I know that if I give them what they want, I'll hate myself and nothing will change. Before doubting myself again, I breathe deeply and submit. Monday afternoon, my phone rings while I'm reviewing work plans, and my mother's name appears. Since she called unexpectedly, my stomach sinks. An ancient instinct makes me answer instead of leaving it on voicemail. Before I greet her, she says she can't believe I'd be so ungrateful after all they did for me. As a child, her biting voice made me want to hide. She says, "They sacrifice so much for me and my brother, and this is how I repay them." I try to say I volunteered to help, but she interrupts me. She shows me the email and says they need family loyalty, not donations. I almost laugh when she says loyalty, but my chest hurts. I was loyal to people who criticized me for being me my whole life. I muttered about wanting to help Ethan, but she cut me off again, saying it wasn't true aid. Writing a check and trusting them would help. I can hear my father talking, but I can't understand. My mother switches tactics and recounts my childhood failures. She talks about my 7th grade math B as if it was a big disappointment. She claims I wasn't trying hard because I wasn't cast in the 9th grade play. She turns every ordinary childhood experience into proof of my flaws. My phone comments are getting softer and shorter. Sitting at the kitchen table while she explains how the broken dishwasher is related to my negative energy feels like I'm 15. I hate repeating this cycle, but I keep shrinking. My body stops when she says something. She thinks I have plenty of money because I don't have kids like Ethan. When she casually condemns a child for being born and needing stuff, my chest loosens. Both of us are surprised by my laughter. Not a happy laugh. It sounds like something breaking from overbending. I explain that this chilly tone is the problem when she asks what's funny. She keeps blaming others for her actions, and I'm done. My voice shakes, but I speak. I've been blamed for things I couldn't control my whole life, and I won't anymore. Despite her usual interruptions, I won't let her. I spoke over her and told her I would help Ethan find services and payment options, but I would not give them money to keep denying responsibility. The background noise is my father ranting about rude kids and ungrateful girls. As a child, my mother's furious to icy voice scared me. She says, "Fine, they'll figure it out on their own, as they always do. No thanks to me." She hangs up before I can respond, leaving me shivering in my office with my phone. I walk to the bathroom and lock myself in a stall for 12 minutes to calm my breathing. My entire body is tingling with adrenaline, rage, and pride. I defied her. I spoke about things I had been thinking about for years but was afraid to say. I wash my face with cold water and work when I come out. I can't focus on work all afternoon. Lucas finds me staring at nothing on the couch that night. He comes down next to me, and I start crying the angry, irritated tears I'd been holding back since the phone call. I cry as he embraces me on his chest. He hears about the call and how my mother treated every childhood failure like a trial when I can speak. I tell him about the kids depleting resources statement and how it broke my heart to hear her blame Ethan for his existence like she blamed me. Lucas runs his hand through my hair and says, "Setting boundaries doesn't make me a bad person." He reminds me that they requested help but declined when I offered conditions. They wanted me to fix their issue without changing their operations. He's right, but it hurts. I hoped they'd surprise me and get my point. Instead, they were as I expected. I wrote Ethan an email the next day. I find his old address in my contacts from years ago and stare at the blank message for 25 minutes, trying to think of something to say. I delete 4 versions before reaching a concise solution. I offer to investigate hospital payment arrangements and financial aid programs for him. I suggest a few online resources and help him apply. I don't talk about our parents, the call, or family drama. I focus on the issue, not the emotions. My finger hovers over the submit button for 7 minutes before pressing it. The email disappears, and I wonder if the address is valid, or if it bounces. Over the next 4 days, I check email constantly. Every notification, even work-related or spam, makes me queasy. I always have my phone with me and check for his response at night. Lucas notices me looking at my phone during dinner and asks if I'm expecting something big. When I tell him about the email, he silently squeezes my hand across the table. The 4th day brought an answer. Ethan thanks me for the offer but says, "Our parents already found another solution." He doesn't say what they found or where the money came from. I read the letter 6 times looking for subtext, but it's plain and brief. I'm relieved I don't have to engage further and guilty that I possibly should have given them the money. I hate that I'm still doubting people who've never mistreated me. My therapy session with Dr. Claire Morgan is 3 days away, so I call now. She listens as I recount the entire conversation, including my mother listing my childhood mistakes as trial evidence. Dr. Claire Morgan asks me to note my responses throughout the call. I quieted down as my mother spoke. I returned to accepting her words and shrinking. Like 11-year-old me, I apologized for undeserved mistakes. Dr. Claire Morgan says my conclusion speech broke the pattern. She says, "The fact that I regressed initially doesn't erase the fact that I found my voice and set a boundary." I tell her that's not enough, because I let her talk like that for most of the conversation. Dr. Claire Morgan advises me not to expect immediate success in changing habits. I tell her, "I learned my mother will never see me differently no matter what I accomplish." Dr. Claire Morgan nods and says, "That's actually important information because now I can stop trying to prove myself to someone who refuses to see the proof." I check my phone all week, even though Ethan has responded. I wait for my parents to call with more demands or wrath. But nothing happens. The stillness confirms my suspicions, making it almost as bad as another fight. They only wanted my money, not a relationship. If they cared about me, they would have followed up or at least claimed to care. Instead, they were told no, and disappeared. She asks how I feel when I tell Dr. Claire Morgan at our next appointment. Although it makes me sad, it also frees me from wondering if things will change. My worries disappear at work. I work on details of a community center project at my desk for hours. 4 nights I stayed late and 3 times I arrived early. Daniel Harris stops by my office on Friday afternoon and remarks that I've been working long hours. He asks how I'm doing, and suggests I take a day off next week. My work has been a way to avoid thinking about the family issue. I thank him and promise to take Monday off, even though I hate being bored. Rachel asks me for lunch in the break room that afternoon. We order salads that barely touch at a nearby restaurant. I tell her everything, including being the family scapegoat, my brother's operation, and my father's money request. I tell her about my phone call with my mother and how I stood up to her. But I feel awful. Rachel listens until I finish, then says she hasn't spoken to her father in 7 years. According to her, guilt never goes away but improves over time. Her father was controlling and manipulative, and cutting him off was the best thing she did for herself. Hearing a professional I admire discuss similar family issues helps me feel less alone. Rachel says something meaningful to me. She reminds me that choosing oneself isn't selfish, when you could burn yourself to warm others. Though it's a familiar saying, hearing it from her makes it more genuine. Her accomplishments, respect, and life control led her to make the same decision I am. That makes me think I'm not bad for hiding from my parents. We eat lunch and go to work, but I keep thinking about what she said. Perhaps self-care does not mean bad daughterhood. Perhaps my parents prevented both. That night I retrieve a college journal my therapist encouraged me to keep. Something motivates me to write in it again after years. I sit down with a notepad and write down my entire blame history from birth to now. I find specific events that fit into this system where my parents were never at fault. I and Ethan were blamed for every job loss, financial hardship, and family crisis. I describe how they never took responsibility for their drinking, financial mismanagement, or refusal to see doctors. Seeing it all on paper helps me see a pattern rather than just negative events. Not that I was unlucky or cursed. They needed someone to blame to avoid facing themselves. Lucas suggests we take a weekend getaway. He books a small coastal cottage for the weekend. As we drove out of the city on Friday after work, my shoulders relaxed. Although small and old, the cottage is conveniently located on the beach. Saturday mornings I walk alone in the sand while Lucas sleeps. I keep walking despite the cold gray ocean and wind blowing my hair. Physical distance from my hometown mirrors emotional distance I'm trying to maintain. Being 5 hours away isn't enough. Sometimes I need to be alone and think. I realized something new and obvious while walking on the beach. My parents' story about my bad luck never involved me. I was 7 months old when my dad lost his job. My mother was in a car accident when I was 3. They blamed a baby rather than admitting my father was fired for poor performance, or my mother was driving distracted. The story included every bad thing that happened after that because it had to be true. If I was the issue, they didn't need to change. They could keep making bad financial decisions, ignore their health issues, and blame their daughter for everything. Realization makes sense but does not lessen pain. Never about me. Everything was about them. Returning to my condo, I searched my contacts for Emma's number. We haven't spoken in months because life got busy and we forgot to call. She answers on the 4th ring, surprised and happy to hear from me. We chat for 12 minutes about her new job, my promotion, and her cat. Then I tell her about my parents' money requests, Ethan's surgery, and my struggle to figure out what I owe them. Emma listens without interrupting, and when I finish, she reminds me of my freshman year apology to our dorm neighbor for loud breathing. She says I apologized for existing, but now I'm setting boundaries with people who made me feel worthless for 19 years. She's proud of my progress, and I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until it hit me. We talk for another 90 minutes about everything and nothing, and it feels good to be with someone who remembers me when I was learning to be human. Emma announces her engagement in 6 weeks and spring wedding near the end of the call. She invites me to the wedding party, and I gladly accept. The request brings me joy unrelated to my family drama. This is my life now. They chose me, and I chose them. I sit on my couch after we hang up, feeling lighter than in weeks. The next day, I'm cleaning out my closet to find a jacket I hadn't worn in years and find a cardboard box in the back. I received old family photos from my mother after moving out. Childhood photos made me uncomfortable, so I never looked at them. I lay them out one by one on my bed. While everyone else is happy at a birthday party, I'm 6 and staring at the camera with sadness. In a school photo, I was 9 and slumped like I was trying to disappear. At a family event at 13, Ethan smiles and I look down. I see that in every shot now. Even on happy occasions, my eyes are sad. I carried their responsibility before realizing it. Only 5 photos of me alone or with high school friends who liked me remain after going through the box. I donate the rest because I don't need concrete memories of a childhood I've spent years undoing. Dr. Claire Morgan asks me about my family relationship at my next appointment. The question surprises me because I've been focusing on what I don't want and forgetting what I do. I sat there for 90 seconds, unsure how to respond. I tell her I don't want no contact forever because it feels like letting them win differently. I also reject their reality, which blames me for all their problems. Dr. Claire Morgan nods and suggests we practice future conversation so I can stay calm without defending my position. We role play for the rest of the session. Dr. Claire Morgan plays my mother and accuses me of abandoning the family. I practice answering quietly without explaining or fighting. I underestimated its difficulty. Every time Dr. Claire Morgan accuses me in my mother's voice, I feel smaller and quieter, like I'm 16. We discuss the same topic 6 times before I shut down or get angry. Dr. Claire Morgan assures me that this is normal, and that years of indoctrination do not disappear just because I understand them. I sit down with my laptop that night and write a letter I won't send. Write down everything I want to tell my parents about their scapegoating's harm. I wrote about thinking I was cursed at 11. I bought my own school supplies at 17 to avoid being a burden. I graduated college with honors and am still waiting for their approval. About moving 5 hours away because I couldn't breathe in their home. The letter was 5 pages. When I finish writing, I feel a pressure release in my chest I didn't know I had. I save it to a PC folder before closing the laptop. 6 weeks without my parents has left me forgetting everything. Ethan unexpectedly calls to say his surgery went well and he's recovering at home. Though the email is only 4 words, he ends with an awkward paragraph thanking me for volunteering to help even though they didn't need it. I read it 6 times to make sure I'm not misinterpreting his closest apology. I respond 2 days later to avoid appearing eager. I'm glad he's okay and offer to chat. Pressure-free. I keep it brief and encourage future communication without pressuring him. We can connect with Ethan without our parents but not repair them. His perspective is changing. Perhaps that's enough now. 2 weeks later, Daniel Harris invites me into his office, and I walk there wondering what I did wrong. Instead, he tells me I'll manage a major downtown public library project. I'm staring at him, trying to process my biggest project yet. Daniel Harris says I earned it by working hard for 6 years and can handle it. I trusted him instead of waiting for the other shoe to drop or him to admit his mistake. Project will consume my time for the next few months in the best way. I'm using skills I've developed over years of pushing myself to prove I'm not cursed, unfortunate, or whatever my parents called me. I spend most nights drawing, meeting with the design team, and presenting to the customer. Halfway through a presentation, I realize my parents will say, "This success won't last," that something will fall apart because that's what happens to me. I ignore them and continue discussing load-bearing walls and natural light optimization. Client loves the design. Daniel Harris walks me back to my desk after the presentation and says the team wants drinks on Friday to celebrate the project. I tell him I'll be there, feeling proud and astonished to lead something so big. Lucas emails me that afternoon asking how the presentation went, and I respond with 3 celebration emojis because I can't say it without sounding too happy. He immediately suggests doing something special this weekend. He tells me 3 days later that he has reserved a downtown Italian restaurant for Rachel and some office mates. I spent 25 minutes looking at my clothes to decide what to wear to a dinner celebrating my success, which seems absurd but good. I arrive at the restaurant on Friday night to find everyone at a table waiting for me. Rachel calls me over, and Lucas brings out my chair like a formal occasion. Daniel Harris bought snacks for the table and kept saying the customer liked my presentation. I sit there listening to coworkers compliment my job every day. I realize this is normal. Nobody expects me to fail. How long my luck lasts is not a joke. These individuals truly enjoy having me around and believe I am competent at what I do. Rachel raises her glass and mentions how she knew I'd be running projects after a year and a half of mentoring me. The entire table toasts, and I have to blink back tears since I've never had anyone honor me in this way. My parents had a massive celebration for my brother when he got into college, but they warned me not to make a big deal about my scholarship. This supper with coworkers meant more to me than any family gathering ever has. The next week, my phone reminds me of my mother's birthday. I gaze at the notice for a full 90 seconds before swiping away. Every year since I left home, I've contacted Mom on her birthday, even though she hardly recognized mine. This year, I do not answer the phone. I feel bad for around 90 minutes. That old familiar ache in my gut tells me I'm being a lousy daughter. Then I recall Mom didn't call on my previous birthday, which broke her annual habit of checking in to see if I'd failed yet. She couldn't even raise her normal sympathetic voice to inquire about my well-being. The guilt disappears quickly after that. I spend the rest of the day working on project planning, not thinking about her until Lucas asks if I may talk to my family that evening. I tell him no, and he just nods, squeezes my hand, and does not press me to explain. My next session with Dr. Claire Morgan is 3 weeks later than our regular weekly schedule. She advised spreading them out because I've been doing better, and I agreed, even though a part of me still craves the weekly check-in. We spend the first few minutes getting caught up on the project, supper, and my mother's birthday. Dr. Claire Morgan sits back in her chair and says something unexpected. She says I'm not simply surviving anymore. I'm actually doing well, constructing a life based on my values rather than simply reacting to my family's rejection. I sit with it for a moment because she is correct. The condo, the job, the relationship with Lucas, the friendships with Rachel, and my coworkers. None of this happened because I was fleeing from my parents. It occurred because I selected it. I constructed it on purpose. Dr. Claire Morgan inquires how that feels. And I tell her it feels strange, good, and sometimes terrifying since there's still a voice in my brain that expects everything to come apart. She reminds me that the voice belongs to my mother, not to me. And I may choose whether or not to listen to it. 4 weeks later, I receive an SMS from an unknown number. I almost delete it, assuming it's spam, but something compels me to read it. The message claims it's from Ethan and asks if we might meet for coffee when he visits my city in 2 weeks for a follow-up appointment. My instant emotion is a surge of dread that surprises me. I thought I was done worrying what my brother thought. I stared at the message for 12 minutes, trying to figure out what he wanted. Half of me wants to disregard it, but another half wonders why he's reaching out now. I reply back, "Sure, we can meet at a coffee shop near the hospital, somewhere public where I can leave if it gets weird." He answers with a thumbs up emoji and a time. I spent the following few weeks thinking if I made a mistake by agreeing to this. Ethan arrives up looking better than I've seen him in years. He's regained some weight and no longer looks gray and weary like he did when I met him in the ICU. We get coffee and go at a corner table, and the first 12 minutes are so unpleasant that I almost regret coming. He inquires about employment, and I provide brief responses. I inquire about his recuperation, and he does the same. We're dancing around anything he really wants to say. Then he sets his cup down and looks at me squarely for the first time. He informs me that throughout his rehabilitation, he has been thinking a lot about our family and how things happened when we were youngsters. He thinks he's starting to view things differently now that he's been away from the house. I don't say anything, just wait for him to continue talking. He describes how our parents panicked when he underwent surgery, saying they couldn't bear the burden of really having to care for someone. He saw them hurry and worry, blaming everyone but themselves for not saving money. It helped him realize things he hadn't wanted to see before. He does not offer me a full apology, and I do not expect one. He did admit that he profited from being the golden kid, while I was blamed for everything. He acknowledges that he went along with it since it was simpler than confronting them. He claims that watching our parents struggle financially and fall apart over his medical bills taught him that they aren't good at caring for anyone, including themselves. They just wanted someone to blame, and I was available. I respect his honesty more than I expected. I don't need him to reject our parents or legitimize what I've gone through. Just hearing him admit that the family dynamic was messed up and that he played a role in it is enough. We ended up talking for nearly 3 hours, which was far longer than I had planned. We talk about college and how he dropped out, as well as the years he spent at home playing video games because he didn't know what else to do. He asks about my current life and actually listens when I tell him about the architecture firm, Lucas, and my condo. Before we leave, we agree to stay in touch and possibly start something new, rather than attempting to repair a sibling relationship that never existed in the first place. Near the end of our conversation, Ethan mentions that he is finally looking for a real job. He's been applying and has a few interviews scheduled. He claims that our parents are upset with him for wanting to move out and that they keep telling him he isn't ready or that he should save money first. Sitting there listening to him, I realize they need someone to manage and control things. When I left, they still had Ethan, but now that he's getting healthier and more independent, they're losing control. Without me to blame, Ethan became the target in various ways. Not the scapegoat, but the project. The person they could watch over and make decisions for. He's starting to see it and wants to get out. After Ethan leaves, I sit in my car for a few minutes before heading home. Then I call Dr. Claire Morgan, even though it is not our session day. She responds, and I tell her about the meeting, including everything Ethan said. I'm surprised at how much lighter I feel. Having Ethan acknowledge even a portion of the family dysfunction makes me feel less crazy about my decision to distance myself. Dr. Claire Morgan agrees that having just one person validate your experience can sometimes change everything. She asks how I feel about staying in touch with him, and I say cautiously hopeful. I don't expect him to become my best friend or anything, but having one family member who is willing to be open feels worthwhile. That night, Lucas asks if I believe my parents will ever change. We're sitting on the couch, my cat curled up between us, and he's asking the question cautiously, as if he's unsure whether I want to talk about it. I think about it for a full minute before responding. I tell him I no longer need them to change. My peace no longer depends on whether they grow, learn, or remain the same. I have built a life without them, and it is good. If they want to be a part of it someday, they must meet me where I am, rather than expecting me to shrink back into the role they gave me. Lucas nods and pulls me closer, and we sit in peaceful silence. The cat stretches, digging her claws into my leg. And I don't mind because I'm enjoying this quiet evening at home with someone I love and a pet who hasn't run away. This is the life I chose, and it is sufficient. The holidays approach faster than I expected. November arrives with cold mornings and early darkness, and everyone at work begins discussing Thanksgiving plans. Lucas asks what I want to do, and for the first time in my life, I realize I don't have to dread making the obligatory phone call home or feel bad about not showing up. I tell him I want to host something at our home and invite people who want to be around us. He grins and begins compiling a list of friends to invite. We spend 10 days planning the menu and cleaning the condo, and I find myself excited rather than anxious. Rachel delivers wine and homemade rolls. 3 of Lucas's co-workers show up with dessert. My cat hides under the bed for the first 90 minutes before slowly creeping out to investigate all the new people. We crowd around my small dining table, which barely accommodates everyone, and pass dishes family style, and it feels warm and genuine in a way that holidays at my parents' house never did. Halfway through dinner, Rachel refills her wine glass and asks how I'm doing with everything, gesturing at the table as if she means more than the food. I take a quiet minute to consider my response because she deserves honesty. I tell her how sad I am about what could have been, the family I should have had but did not. But I'm not willing to give up my well-being for people who refuse to see me clearly. She raises her glass, saying, "That's the healthiest thing she's heard all year." Everyone else raises their glasses as well. We toast to our chosen family and new traditions. And I feel something settle in my chest that had been unsettled for years. My phone buzzes during dessert, and I almost ignore it. But something prompts me to check. It is a text from Ethan. Just a few words to let me know he is thinking of me and hoping I am having a good day. Nothing elaborate or emotional, just short and genuine. I stare at the message for a long moment, then save it to a folder I've started keeping of the few good family moments I have. It's not much, But it's real, and that matters more than I expected it to. I text back a simple thanks and same to you. Then put my phone away and rejoin the conversation. Lucas catches my eye across the table, and I smile at him, feeling hopeful about having at least one family connection that isn't built on blame and dysfunction. Work picks up the week after Thanksgiving as we push toward the project launch deadline. I spend long hours at the office finalizing details and coordinating with contractors. And somehow it all comes together better than I imagined. The community center opens in early December, and the local architecture magazine sends someone to photograph it and interview me about the design process. When the article comes out 12 days later, Daniel Harris frames it and hangs it in my office without asking. He just walks in one morning with the framed magazine page and a drill and puts it on the wall across from my desk. I stare at it for a solid 90 seconds, reading my own name in print next to photos of something I created. Daniel Harris tells me to let myself feel proud without qualifying it with worry about what might go wrong next. I nod and actually try to do that, sitting with the accomplishment instead of immediately looking for ways it might fall apart. My next session with Dr. Claire Morgan happens a few days before Christmas. We've been meeting every 3 weeks since the whole Ethan surgery situation, but she opens this session by asking if I think I'm ready to reduce to monthly check-ins. The question catches me off guard. I think about the past couple of months and realize the family crisis didn't destroy the stability I've built. I handled it without falling apart or reverting to old patterns for more than brief moments. I tell her, yes, I think I'm ready. And she smiles like she already knew my answer. We spend the rest of the session talking about what monthly check-ins will look like and what warning signs to watch for. That might mean I need more frequent support again. Walking out of her office, I feel proud in a different way than the magazine article. This pride is quieter and deeper about emotional work nobody sees, but that matters just as much. Lucas and I are washing dishes one night when he brings up the future in a way that feels different from our usual vague planning. He asks if I've thought about getting engaged. And my immediate reaction is to check myself for panic about cursing our relationship. But the panic doesn't come. I dry a plate and tell him honestly that I have thought about it, and I don't feel scared anymore. I've learned my presence in people's lives isn't a burden, but a gift. He stops washing and looks at me with this expression I can't quite name and says we should talk seriously about it. We spend the next 90 minutes on the couch mapping out what we want our lives to look like. And it's easy and exciting instead of heavy with dread about inevitable failure. I write the letter to my parents on a Saturday morning while Lucas is at the gym. I've written versions of this letter before, but never sent them. Always talking myself out of it or deciding silence was safer. This time I keep it brief and clear. I explain I'm open to contact if they can respect me as an adult with my own life, but I won't accept blame or manipulation anymore. I outline specific boundaries about what kind of relationship I'm willing to have and what behaviors I won't tolerate. I read it 4 times, checking for anything that sounds like I'm asking for their approval or trying to convince them I'm worthy. Then I address an envelope and walk to the mailbox before I can change my mind. The letter drops through the slot with a soft thud, and I stand there for a moment, feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. 4 weeks pass with no response. I check the mail every day, even though I told myself I wouldn't. Lucas asks if I'm okay and I realize I actually am. Their silence is an answer in itself. Some people aren't capable of the relationship I deserve, and that's about them, not me. I stop checking the mail obsessively and focus on the life I'm building instead of the one I'll never have with them. Ethan calls in mid-January, and I answer on the 4th ring. He sounds different, more energetic than I've heard him in years. He tells me he got a job offer at a tech support company and he's moving into his own apartment in 6 weeks. His voice shakes a little when he talks about it. Nervous but excited, and I encourage him genuinely. I tell him I'm happy he's building his own independence. And I mean it. We talk for 25 minutes about his apartment search and his new job, and it's the most normal sibling conversation we've ever had. Before we hang up, he thanks me again for meeting with him back in November and says it helped him see things more clearly. I tell him he did the hard work himself. I just listened. After the call, I sit in my home office looking at the framed magazine article on my wall. My cat jumps into my lap and starts purring, and I pet her absently while thinking about how far I've come. I realize somewhere along the way I stopped thinking of myself as the family scapegoat and started seeing myself as someone who survived a difficult childhood and built something beautiful anyway. The shift in identity feels huge, like stepping into a version of myself I always wanted to be but didn't think I deserved. I'm not the cursed daughter, or the bad luck charm, or the burden they tried to make me believe I was. I'm just someone who refused to accept their story about who I had to be, and wrote a better one instead. I'm sitting on the couch Tuesday night with my feet tucked under me, watching Lucas rinse dinner plates at the sink. He turns around and wipes his hands on a dish towel, then walks over and sits next to me without saying anything at first. my cat jumps down from the armrest and disappears into the bedroom. Lucas takes my hand, and his palm feels warm against mine. He tells me he doesn't want to wait for some perfect moment because our regular life together is already perfect. He asks if I'll marry him, and his voice is steady, but his hand trembles slightly in mine. I say yes before he finishes the question, tears already sliding down my cheeks. He pulls a simple silver ring from his pocket and slides it onto my finger. We sit there crying and laughing at the same time, and I think about how this moment isn't cursed or doomed or temporary. It's just real and good and mine. We spend the next 90 minutes calling people to share the news. Emma answers on the first ring, and I barely get the words out before she screams so loud I have to hold the phone away from my ear. She's already talking about engagement party colors and venue options before I can tell her we haven't planned anything yet. Rachel congratulates us and says she knew it was coming because she's never seen two people fit together so naturally. Each call feels easy and happy without any weight of family drama or waiting for someone to tell me it won't last. I text Ethan because calling feels too formal for where we are in rebuilding our relationship. He responds within a few minutes saying he's happy for me and asking if he can meet Lucas sometime. I type back yes immediately and mean it completely. Having one family member who's genuinely trying to show up differently feels like more than I expected to have. Over the next couple of months, planning the wedding becomes something I actually enjoy instead of a source of stress about who to invite or who might ruin things. Lucas and I look at venues with Emma and laugh at her increasingly elaborate ideas. We pick a small garden space that feels intimate and warm. I make a guest list of people who actually want to celebrate with us, not people I'm obligated to include. Ethan texts occasionally asking about details and offering to help with setup. I add him to the list without hesitation. The whole process feels light and joyful because I'm surrounded by people who chose me and I chose them back. I realize one night while addressing invitations that this is the family I needed all along. Not the one I was born into that treated me like a burden, but the one I built myself from friends and partners and the one brother who decided to do better. That's not bad luck or a curse finally breaking. That's just the best thing I ever did for